Hello and welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, joined by my co-host, Matt Giraldi, and today we're coming at you with a 12-team Superflex 3-wide receiver league. Let's get into it. All right, so I'm going to be drafting from the 5 spot, Matt from the 8 spot, and coming into the 5th spot, right, obviously you're hoping for one of the quarterbacks, or Jamar Chase, I guess. So in the most realistic mock that we'll ever do, I'm going to take Jamar Chase at 5 here in a Superflex league.
Yeah, I guess we could just pretend that Chase was taken in the Jefferson spot and you would have gone JJ anyway. So for me, I actually do have Joe Burrow as my QB4 and Jalen Hurts is my QB5. I know that's not necessarily consensus, but I am happy to see Hurts fall to me here. Obviously, in 12 team, kind of push these guys up. And if you're able to hone in on one of the elite guys, I do think it's worth it because there is a lot of value that falls at the other positions. So looking back around at my wide receiver board, I've got Brian Thomas Jr. and Nico Collins in the same tier. So that's definitely of interest to me. At the running back position, Christian McCaffrey is my highest ranked player, but I've said this ad nauseum that I want to get a top 8 wide receiver on my team. So I will go with Brian Thomas Jr. here. I keep flip-flopping he and Nico Collins, but I don't know. I'm just splitting hairs. They're both awesome.
Yeah, both of them are very good, and I don't think you can go wrong between the two of them. I do want to highlight that around the turn, once Jalen Hurts goes, even in 12-team leagues, look at the no quarterbacks go. And I think you're going to see that in a unique way this year that you haven't in the past. Even in your 12-team leagues, that those top 5 are going to go. And then everybody else is going to be looking to load up on the players that do end up falling around the turn and going with a third or a 3-4 quarterback or even a 5-6 first quarterback. So definitely take note of that. If you're not comfortable early in your draft going quarterback, and you want to get a Jefferson or a Chase or a Bijan because you don't know how good the value is going to be and you feel more comfortable with your quarterbacks later, definitely take a peek at that when you're mock drafting, right? We obviously suggest taking one of those quarterbacks, but just make sure you know what the scenarios look like, what your different teams look like, and just practice different builds so you're aware.
Yeah, if people have Mahomes in a similar tier to like all the way down to Purdy, there's going to be a little bit of chicken going on, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a huge thing in a lot of drafts this year. Maybe somebody just goes in on Mahomes early, but I don't think a lot of people are doing it even in Superflex. I think they're trying to wait out the quarterback value, and that 6 to 17 range just feels very similar now. So that's been a good development, I feel like, as we've getting closer and closer to actual drafts. So, all right, I'm going to make my pick here. I'm going to go with Nico Collins. Obviously, you were debating it, and I want the receiver, and he's got all kinds of upside. He obviously could be the number 1 receiver in fantasy if he keeps that pace he was on last year. All kinds of upside too with the supporting cast around him improving a lot. So as long as he stays healthy, he should be awesome. A lot of players that I would have loved to have went around the turn, but I will say I still have Jonathan Taylor as my running back 8. And so that makes this pick pretty easy. And I'm going to continue on that trend of playing chicken at the quarterback position and see what I can get down the board.
All right, I like that pick. So looking at my board, at the wide receiver position, I've got T. Higgins and JSN as my top ranked guys. However, at the running back position, I do have Chase Brown still available to me. So I think I will go with a little bit of mix of everything because I do see that tier of wide receivers starting with Higgins and JSN at kind of that 12 to 13 range is a pretty wide group. So I'd rather just get a guy that I can kind of build around at the running back position. Now, whether or not I start to lean into a little bit more robust one way or the other, he's someone who I think is just going to have a monster workload on an elite offense. So maybe I'm not as in on him on Dynasty, but I think for this year in redraft, he's wheels up. So swinging back around, it is interesting to look. I did miss out on Higgins, Tyreek Hill, and JSN. Garrett Wilson, I'm kind of just, I don't know. I love him as a player. And if he works out with that old connection, like so be it. But just kind of scaring me off a little bit. So I did mention maybe leaning into the running back a little bit more. So maybe I will try a build just because I typically do go wide receiver heavy. So my top ranked guy is still James Cook. Love the fact that he got his contract, obviously an elite offense. So definitely feel like now I can start to hammer wide receiver and feel good about those 2 guys at the RB spot.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the James Cook pick. Now that he's back in camp and they got it all figured out, I feel like he's going to be great this year. I expect the volume to increase too. I mean, people are talking about how he took a step back in volume, how they have Ray Davis, how they have Ty Johnson. I just am not worried about that. I think the volume is going to return. I could see an improved passing game role as well. So I do really like James Cook still this year. I broke the offseason having him up at RB8. I've softened on that a lot, but I still do really like the role in the player.
I just like that we've seen it in two different ways in 2 different years. Like he's not going to score
Yeah.
18 touchdowns again, but he can meet in the middle. I mean, he was RB12 and RB8. Like if he's RB10, like that would be great.
Yeah, exactly. And he can do it with a passing game role, and he can do it with a super efficient rushing game, and he can do it with a little bit more volume rushing game. He's not going away. He's not just going to not play. So, I mean, he's going to be out there a lot, and I do think he's a great pick.
And you and I have talked about this before. Like I think, Ray Davis is a solid player, but I've never really understood this offseason where the whole talk is around Ray Davis carving out a bigger role. Whereas on the flip side, when it comes to Bucky Irving and like Sean Tucker, no one's really talking about Sean Tucker. And to me, he looked even more explosive than Ray Davis. So I don't really know what the deal is. Maybe it's just kind of Bucky mania, but I'm just not really that afraid of Ray Davis because so many of those games where he had a good showing was where they were blowouts, right? Like they didn't need to play James Cook as well.
Yeah, no, and I love the Bucky Mania call out, just like crazed to the point where they can't even fathom that there's other people on the roster. So for me, and this pick makes it very easy for me, right? Played chicken at quarterback, and I get Kyler Murray. I have him inside my top 10. Very excited to have him as my QB1. I feel like that takes the pressure off of the position in a major way now, where I don't even feel like I have to go back in here if I didn't want to. Now, I do have Goff at 8, so I am going to go back in. And in 12-team leagues, if I can start with 3 players that are not quarterbacks and then go quarterback here and get 2 of my top 10, I'm going to be doing that every single time. And that's what I think we're talking about with waiting. There just isn't that urgency to pick the 6th or the 7th quarterback because there's such a wide number of quarterbacks and people have them ranked so differently across the industry and just probably across your friend groups and stuff. So
yeah,
that's just an excellent way to spend my 4th and 5th round picks, especially in 12-team leagues.
Yeah, and now obviously QB is very deep this year, and I'm looking at the QB rankings right now on the board. Purdy, who I recently moved one spot ahead of Goff, but then it's Stroud, Dak. So I've got Dak a spot behind Purdy. So I think just looking at teams 9, 10, 11, and 12, I have to assume that at least 2 of those guys, probably 3 in a real draft would be gone. And I'm just not necessarily comfortable enough with like JJ McCarthy is my number 2 or like Trevor Lawrence. Like, okay, you can stack him with Brian Thomas Jr., but it's still the Jaguars. So I will go ahead and take Purdy here. I know I kind of preached leaning into wide receiver, but now I've got 2 quarterbacks that are, safely inside my top 11. All right. So swinging back to my pick again, I have been playing a little bit scary with these wide receivers.
Team 9 looks like your normal teams.
I know.
Just
I know.
all receivers.
I'm kind of jealous of that team, to be honest with you. That just makes me really excited. So wide receiver is getting a little thin. There's not a whole ton of guys that I love here, truthfully. So I guess I will peek at the running back position, but no, obviously I'm good at quarterback, tight end. Now that I've missed out on the big 3, I'm probably going to wait. So at wide receiver, I'm not someone that has been super in on Xavier Worthy really all off season or really all last season, but I don't know. There's just, if Rice does get suspended for like 6 to 8 games, there's no doubt that he's going to have some value. So I don't love this pick at all because we don't know what the suspension is going to be for Rice. And I don't think Worthy's going to be all that fantastic when Rice is on the field, but I got to kind of shoot for some upside and then maybe draft some stability later.
Yeah, interesting. Going Worthy over Cortland Sutton was surprising to me. I have Cortland Sutton pushed quite a ways up from where he's going. I have him at wide receiver 18. I know you don't like Bo Nix, so maybe that's playing in here, but Cortland Sutton is the best player on my board here. I could, because I need a running back, go with David Montgomery. And it gets pretty thin here at running back, but I think I'm just going to pivot to like Tony Pollard if all of these guys go in the next round. So I'm going to lock in Cortland Sutton to be my 3rd wide receiver.
Yeah, we'll see if Pollard makes it to you, but that's definitely someone who's probably going to have a really nice season, at least to start.
Yeah, especially with Tajay Spears out. And actually, DeAndre Swift, I think, made it back to me. So not all of the running backs went. That worked out nicely. I'm just going to take Swift. I have him ranked at 21. Not the greatest upside play, but I feel like if he's going to be the one in Ben Johnson's offense, that we should, continue to expect that he can be the low end running back two for your team. And in the seventh round, I don't necessarily need anything that's going to be over the top. Like I'm trying to pick a running back two that I can feel comfortable playing. And I feel like that's Swift.
In an effort to continue to build out my wide receiver room, I will go with my top ranked player in Chris Olave. I know I'm definitely above consensus on him, but I think I'm just going to bet on the talent. And as this swings back around, hopefully I get some good value here. And I do. And this is someone who is definitely a stabilizer that I can plug into my wide receiver three. That's Jacoby Myers.
Nice.
So this is starting to round out. Okay, actually, it'll be interesting to see how this team turns out. There's some risk, but I think I can save it.
Yeah, no, and Jacoby Myers, well, and that's the other thing too about trying different builds, right? Obviously, Matt loves to go in on receivers early. And so when he only has 1 through 5 rounds, it's like, oh my gosh, what can I do to kind of salvage the position group?
Yeah.
And seeing that he gets 3 players that he likes, well, maybe 2, and then a wild card upside play with Worthy. But I really like the Myers pick. I'm bummed that you swooped in there on him. I'm in a position here where, right, Pearsall, Golden, Ibuka, all those guys that we just talked about in our last video are here. And then at running back, the Tony Pollard is here, the guy that I just was mentioning. So I only have 2 running backs, and I feel like Pollard is kind of the last guy that I expect to be getting a lot of volume. So I'm going to go lock in Pollard first and hope that one of those receivers falls around the turn.
I really
seeing Godwin, there's Golden, Addison,
really
Pearsall,
Ibuka doesn't make it back to you.
Yeah, Ibuka's going to make it back. So in round 9, I'm going to go with Emeka Ibuka. And I do think that this is great for stabilizing my my bench here, right? I mean, I got Pollard and Ibuka to play kind of that flex role, and one of them is going to be on my bench as well. So I really like the start there.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed to see you. I'm just worried that, this is coming out on Saturday when we're doing our home league draft, and that you're going to be a couple picks in front of me and take Ibuka, and I'm not going to be happy about it, but I'm just foreshadowing a little bit. So there's a lot of wide receivers here that feel there's some sameness to me. So someone who, we've talked about at length at the tight end position, David Njoku, I think he's a great pick. I have him tight end 6. I think you have him tight end 6 or 7 as well.
I have Njoku at 5, actually.
Oh, yeah, 5. Okay, so there you go. And Sleeper has him at like tight end 11. So he's someone that should be circled, starred, highlighted, underlined in your sleeper drafts, because now that we know it is Joe Flacco, we've seen their history together, and it's great. So swinging back around at the running back position, there's some depth pieces here, but again, I don't need to draft like Ramondre or J.K. Dobbins right now. So let's keep leaning into wide receiver. I mean, this feels like a pretty easy pick for me if I'm on the clock. Steph Diggs, he looked like he was going to be like completely full go once OTA started. And we've seen some videos where he's like not moving quite as fast. But at this point, I kind of just want to take the shot on, what should be Drake May's number 1.
Yeah. And he's obviously looked much better than anticipated coming off the ACL. So I think he's a pretty safe bet in terms of injury, but overall, obviously going later because new offense, 32, major injury. So if he looks good early, though, that could definitely be a player that we regret letting slip as far as he currently is going. Now, looking at the quarterbacks here, so this is about the time in a 12-team league that you should be looking for a third quarterback. 24 are going to go instead of just 20 as starters, and so the pool gets thin very quickly. So you see Young, Darnold, Rodgers, and then you don't want to get caught down here having to pick one of these guys. So I'm going to take Bryce Young. I feel like just in a situation where he gets off to a good start, builds on last year's finish, he's somebody that you can expect to start all year, and that's not necessarily something you always get out of a third quarterback in your 12-team Superflex league. So I like that. A lot of tight ends went, so it's just doing its best to squeeze me out of the tight end market. But let's see what's left. Kraft is always my target down here.
Yeah, that would have been a good one there.
Yeah, it would have been great to get Kraft. If I wait, I feel like Kraft is usually the one that ends up falling. And I don't mind him as a top 10 tight end. So that's why I kind of always just lean into that if I miss on Njoku. So I'm going to go with Ferguson. I don't want to wait any longer. And I feel like he still is going to be in a high volume offense. And he was great to begin the season last year. Obviously didn't finish so well, but I still think he's going to have a role in Dallas's passing game that should be able to float the position until maybe something else better comes along on the wire.
Yeah, and I wish the computer would draft third quarterbacks. I don't really know why they refuse to do that. So I'm looking at that position as well. And Geno Smith is the top ranked guy, but my opinion on that is, yeah, he's safer than Sam Darnold this year, but I've got a lot of safety up top with Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy. So this is where I'd be more inclined to take a shot on Darnold, just because we saw what the ceiling looked like last year. Now I understand he's moving away from that system in Minnesota. However, I still do think his peak is higher than Geno, so I will go with Darnold here. And then swinging back around, we see a bunch of running backs go, holy cow, Ramondre, Jaden Blue. Gee. So maybe I should rethink that as well. And looking back at that board, I will go in on someone who we talked about in our sleepers video. He has a good chance to start in what should be a revamped offense, and that's Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, I like that pick. And that's your third running back too. So, getting somebody that you can plug in and just won't be a complete zero at this point in the draft, I think is good. And, I feel like a lot of the guys down here that got picked in front of him might be like Charbonnet if Walker's out there, potential zero. Stevenson, if Trevion completely takes over him, potential zero. And Blue over Williams, I'm not sure I understand that from the computer, but Blue might be a complete zero. Najee, eye injury, right, might be a complete zero. Spears, high ankle sprain, we don't know exactly when he's going to go, might be a complete zero. So, as your third running back, especially if you wait this long to take a third, I think getting somebody that should have a solid rushing game role is important, because at least they're not just going to give you nothing if you need them. All right, let's look at running back again. I only have 3 running backs. I feel pretty good about my receiver room. So looking at this, Bashal Tutin, Nick Chubb, Eckler was kind of hyping in the last video as well. I don't really like a lot of those guys. Let's look at there's Keon Coleman. So that's who I'm going to be taking. So I love Coleman this year. I just think that there's a chance that we're looking back at like, what were we doing here? All the tea leaves were there. All the camp reports were there. Second year player. They loved him as a player coming in. So I just think he is definitely somebody worth taking a shot on, because if he is the number one on the Bills, that's something that's going to definitely increase his value from where he's getting. So looking down here, we got 3 more picks to go. And so, like I said, I still do need a running back. So I'm going to be looking at the position now. A lot of the guys that I was looking at went, especially Eckler. But I can look down the board a little bit here, and let's go with Bill. So I did move him up quite a bit. I do have him in my top 40. So obviously at this point, the chances that he goes before this are pretty high, but might as well take a shot in round 13.
Yeah, he was someone that I was definitely eyeing. So I like that pick. Looking back around, I've already got my 3 quarterbacks. I've got my tight end set up. So I definitely want to leave this draft with 1 more running back and ideally 2 more wide receivers, but don't necessarily need to pigeonhole myself into that. So nothing stands out too much at the running back position. At the wide receiver position, Cedric Tillman's been a guy that I've been, targeting quite a bit in this offseason, but I will scroll down a little bit and I'll take Keenan Allen. Again, still buried, in these ADPs. And I think, week 1 against the Chiefs, we might see him get 8 targets in that game, because I think that should obviously be a very competitive game. He's got the rapport with Justin Herbert. So again, if you're in on him, kind of having one last final ride, just make sure you're paying attention in these draft boards or in these draft rooms, because he is pushed down quite a bit. So I guess swinging back around, I will just go ahead and take my guy, Cedric Tillman. I know it's not a great idea to take 2 Browns, and, Cedric Tillman's probably hopefully not someone I'm going to be starting anyways, but we'll see if he kind of emerges as a breakout this year.
Yeah, no, I like that pick. I think it's still solid to have Tillman, and with Flacco starting, again, another guy that could get off to a quick start, could be potentially a flex player, could be potentially trade piece if somebody is dealing with a bunch of injuries at the beginning of the year. And with my pick, I'm going to go with Dylan Sampson. The Quinshon Judkins news still isn't resolved. He hasn't signed yet. We don't know exactly what the NFL investigation is going to yield. So, if he doesn't end up playing to start the year, I mean, we're only 2 weeks away from the start of the season. And so
Yeah.
I'm still going to take Samson until something changes. Now, should that be Jerome Ford? Maybe, but I don't know. I'm going to take the player that I like, the higher upside. They spent draft capital on him. And maybe if you're looking to get a running back to get you off to a quick start, if you need a third or fourth running back, or you went zero RB, Ford might be your guy just because he's probably going to be the starter in week one.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like Samson quite a bit. And without any news on Judkins, I'm going to continue to draft these guys in the late rounds. Pop Douglas. That was going to be my pick right before me. I have him in a dynasty league, so I have to hype him up.
He's kind of sneaking up there.
Yeah, he is. So somebody I like at receiver here that I have also in a couple dynasty leagues is Pat Bryant. They did just trade Devon Vele. And this is for the Denver Broncos. So I am hoping that Pat Bryant is the one who wins that third starting wide receiver position. He obviously is competing with Troy Franklin for that spot. But if it is him, I think that there could be some sneaky value here from the third round pick. He did just have a 4 for 70 game in the preseason, and he only played, a quarter and a half. So, maybe there's some sneaky value there for Pat Bryant.
Yeah, this is Sean Payton's Michael Thomas, right? Like everyone's his
Yeah,
everyone's his Michael Thomas, everyone's his Joker. I love hearing about that.
So exaggerated, but
I love hearing about that all off season. I can't wait to see who's going to be the Joker next season. With my last pick here, traditionally I like to take a flyer on a rookie. I usually do that in, our home league drafts year over year. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I will say, looking at the running back position, there's a few names that are a little bit intriguing. I guess the first one that stands out to me is Ollie Gordon, right? So I will go Gordon here. And I think the fact that Devon Achane is dealing with that soft tissue injury, and I was listening to the CBS guys had one of the, I don't know, it was just a doctor, I don't know who he was, and he was talking about Achane. He was like, well, I think he might miss 3 games, and it's like, okay, well, maybe Jalen Wright's the guy you want, but like Jalen Wright hasn't really shown anything, and I think year over year, we're getting a little bit more evidence that some of these Tennessee guys in the Mickey Mouse system that Josh Heupel runs, like it's just not necessarily working out in the NFL, because Wright's got blazing straight line speed, but I don't know, he's got worse vision than I do. And with Ollie Gordon, it's like Ollie Gordon was not good last year, but if you rewind 2 years ago, this was a guy that was going to be potentially around 1 running back. So this could be a cut. This could be a steal. Who knows? But I think he's someone that I'd be willing to take a shot on given the circumstances.
With that, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.